Hello, everyone. So I can see a couple of people. Hello, Divergent Vlogger. This video is about using context. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about how we can use the use context hook and how that makes it very easy for us to things like global user. So let me just wait for some time. I can see a few users and wait for a few more seconds before I get started. I hope my audio is proper. If someone has a problem, you can definitely let me know, and I will make try to change things if there is any problem. By the way, okay, so let's start. So yes, today what, as I said, right, we will be looking at how to use context in React, which personally I feel is a very useful hook to work with whenever you have situations in your application where you want to, let's say, you have the user object in the application which is spreaded across many parts of the application, right? For example, if you see this StreamYard application, I have my user logo here. It says Amitav Roy, things like this. But then whenever there is a change in my user object, okay, for example, if I have the ability to change my username from here, okay, or from any place for that matter, right? Or if I upload a new image, the expectation will be that the icon should change over here. If I have any comments that I have made, for example, test comment, if I make a comment over here, in every place this should update, correct? That is the usual behavior. But then if you see, this is not that easy to work with because my user object is now spreaded across multiple places. This is, let's just say, if I want to make this entire thing, you know a React application, I would definitely break these elements into different components. I'll have one nav bar where this particular drop down can be one component, correct? So that component will be depending on the user object. Similarly, the comment box over here is one more component which I will create, which will depend on the user object, right? This entire component thing will be one component inside which we will have different components to work with. So as you can see, the user object is actually getting spreaded across multiple components, right? It is being used there. And then at some point, you will see that a change in one component obviously will mean you'll have to propagate that. And that's where this use context will come into your help. So how are we starting it? So let me see if, I hope this Zoom level is okay with you. Today, what I have done is, to start with, I have a clean Next.js application running. I have done nothing else. Okay. So in here, the first thing that we are going to do is to create a context. Okay. We have pages and everything in there. Let's create a file. We'll have a folder for context. Okay. And inside that, let's just say we have user context.js, right? So we'll create our user context over here. It's quite simple. We will export a constant. We will use create context in here. And let's just say by default, this object is null, like this. Okay? So this is our context. Now this context will, um, needs to be provided to components inside our application. Okay. How do we do that? Let's go to our pages folder. You can see there is an index component. Okay, this is our home page, by the way, the page which we are seeing over here. Okay, documentation, learn, everything can be found over here. And this component is actually being wrapped inside this underscore app.js file. Okay, this is our wrapper component. And this is, according to me, the best place to add the global context of our user variable. So how do we do that? Let me just, okay, before I do that, I'll need to create two files, prettier rc, okay, this one, semicolon true, tab width is 2, okay, end of line lf. These three things I would like to put an editor. It's not mandatory, but what happens is my Visual Studio Code configuration is done in a way that if I don't have these two files, it becomes a bit difficult for me to work. Okay, so these two files I'll just create before I start anything. Okay, that's how I typically work. Now, we were basically trying to provide the context to our entire application, right? So we will cut this, and the syntax to provide a context is user context, okay, dot provider. It's a tag inside which we can wrap our entire application, and we need to provide a value to it. Let's just say our value for now is Amitav, like this. Okay, with this change we will not see anything happening over here. Let me just zoom in a bit in this. Okay, can I zoom in to the console? Yes, I can. Okay, but then one thing which I would like you to notice is when I see the components tab, right, you can see I have a content provider thing over here with the value available, right? So this means I will be able to access that particular context within any component which is under this. Okay, that's the general understanding. So let's start with first providing that context to our homepage. Okay, we have this provider, so that's fine. Now in here, what we will do is inside our home page, we will take user equals use context. Sorry. So we will use this context, and we need to, so we are using the hook. As you can see, we are pulling that from React, but in this hook we need to tell which context we are using. So we will pass user context, which is something which we just created, right? And now if I just pass it here, okay, let's go to our app, and you can see I have that variable available inside homepage. Although I never passed the variable Amitav or the name Amitav in the homepage. How did it then came through? So we have this context which was created with a null value initially. When we use the syntax of useContext.provider, userContext.provider, right? We provided it with a value of Amitav. So when the home page over here took the value using the context, use context hook, right? We got what was passed from the app. Okay. So let's look at our browser. I'll refresh it once. And we see we have my app, we have our context provider. The context provider has the value of Amitav, and our home page has that hook context with the value Amitav. Okay. Let me see if I can change it. Oh, yes, I can. So you can see any change in the context provider means everywhere else the value will change. I mean, that's quite obvious, right? I mean, that's how React works. But then, what is the advantage of using this hook? We haven't seen any major difference. I mean, yes, we can pass this as a prop and our homepage could definitely use it. But then, what will happen is, let's just say we, for the sake of our understanding, we create one more page, about.js. By the way, I have a different way of writing components. Like if you see index.js, it is context export default function home, right? This is obviously fine. I mean, this is how what you get with Next.js. But what am I writing is also one way of writing components, and it is perfectly fine. You can use any one, and there really is not too much of a difference. Okay, so I just do export default about something like this. I mean, it's a little long, I definitely agree, but that's how me and my team and in our organization we have got used to things. So that's how we use it, because if you have any HOC to wrap around it, it becomes very useful. That's the only thing. Okay, so yeah, we'll steal a little bit of code from our home page just to keep things a little similar. I need this component. Will it come? No, it doesn't come. I don't know why. So I'll just copy this, import, and steal it. So this is fine. We need to link it somehow. Let's see. Let's link it to the learn tab. How do we do that? Learn. This is fine. Documentation is this tab. So this is the learn tab. I don't want to use a tag in here, because a tag will refresh things when it is inside, I mean inner pages. Okay, so what I will do is I'll do something like this, href about, and this link tag is something which I need to import. Again, this is something which doesn't come for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, I can definitely do this. And now, okay, let it refresh a bit. And right, we are on this page. I know this because I think the head tag also didn't came through. Okay, yeah, this is about is the title. Meta tag is fine, and let's just do main. Okay, and we have about, and I want to display the username over here. Again, what we will do, we will steal a little bit of code from here. Copy, paste in here. Wow, it is not importing use context, which is very strange. Okay, this is working. Will I get this? No. User context. Fine. So for some reason, the importing shortcut is not working for me on VS Code, but that's fine. I can now do something like this about this. And now let's look at this page. Okay, quite simple, right? I really don't see any major difference even now. We have the username, we have the username over here on the home page, and the same username is over here on this page. But then the fun part comes when, let's just say JSON, we get some users from a mock API, okay, like this. So we will come over here. I need Axios, npm install Axios. I really don't use fetch. I don't like the syntax for some reason. So bear with me. I use Axios even now. I like the axios.get, axios.post method rather than, if you see over here, right? You first do fetch, then response JSON, and then this, which I don't know. Somehow I don't really enjoy that syntax, so I don't really use that. Okay. Axios is still implementing, I mean, installing. My internet can be a bit slow sometimes. But yeah, in the meantime, let me see if you guys have any question. Feel free to ask questions if you have. Okay, so far we have only the test comment which I posted, and yeah, divergent bloggers. So yeah, I think no comments yet. I should have. I could have stopped the audio. So can be done. It's just one package. I'm really wondering why so much time. Okay, we are almost there, and it's done. Okay, so I'll just close out the terminal. Now we have Axios, so we can make HTTP calls. We want to call the API when the component is loading. Okay, so let's just say on this page, we use effect. Okay, and we will make a call to the API. But obviously, the API call will be an async function, which we cannot have inside useEffect because useEffect is not async. So let's just have one more function, which is get users. Okay. So in here we have a response, which will be an await. So put it as async Axios Axios dot get. I hope I have the URL. I do. Okay. And I know this will come as a response, but let's look at what is coming, and then we will, make the changes. Do we have any comments over here? Suraj says, um, do you have any preference on structuring providers in specific way as and when project grows? Well, Suraj, the thing is, from my personal experience, you should not be using too many providers. Because the thing is, what I have seen is, if you are using providers, it definitely helps you in your application. Because, for example, the user object, right? The user object can be passed to many components, and those components will very easily get the update that the user object has changed. But then the thing is, the more your component depends on this context or this context provider, right? It, in a way, makes your component dependent on it. Hence, it is not a very good thing. So whatever we do is, there are very few providers that we have, and we put it inside our providers folder. That's typically what we, in the, sorry, the context folder, so that we know how many context we have. And they are very few, so as to say. Okay. All right. So over here, let's go to console. Strange, I don't have anything. Why? Because I never called that function. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I expect things to read my mind, which is really a very bad thing to do. But okay. So we have 10 users in here. I knew that is what is going to come, but fine. So now that we understand that this is the data, what we will do is, we need to show all the users over here. Okay. The idea is, I will have a list of users. If I select a user in here, obviously on this page it will change, but it should change on the home page as well. Okay. So quickly, I'll write some code. We will get users, so we will need to store them. So why don't we have users, set users inside use state. Okay. Use state will be an empty array by default. Okay. And we get this. So when we get the response over here, what we will do is, we will set the response in our state. So set users, sorry, set users is response dot data. That will be the array which we are going to use. Okay. Okay. So let's refresh. And although I don't need to refresh, I think, but yeah, still, we have our about component, and inside the state we have this. So the data is there. Now let's quickly render. Before rendering, let's see if we have any more comments or questions. Okay, I need to hide this. Sorry about that. I hope you were able to see the code. I completely forgot about it. Suraj says thanks. And any thoughts on Redux versus context? Well, Suraj, although context in a way is a very, I would say, slim version of Redux, because it allows you to have a state, a global state, so as to say. But obviously, it can never match Redux. Redux is a little more, well structured. They have, it is meant for handling more data. But then the thing is, you need to decide at some point whether you have enough data, global data, which you want to handle through Redux. If that is the situation, you have to use Redux. But if it is, one or two context which you want to get away with, then I think the use context is a very good option. But yeah, when you have more data, I don't think use context is a very good option. You need to go with a proper state management solution for those scenarios. Okay, so let's get back. So we have our state inside our component. Why don't we render them? So we will say, when we have users and users dot length is greater than 0, we will do the rendering users dot map. Okay, user like this, return p tag. We will get away with the p tag. I need a key user dot id. I think we have an id, if I'm not wrong. Yes, we do have an id, so that's the key. And user dot name is something which we are going to print. Let's save this, and we have all those users over here. Okay, that's fine, that's good progress. Now let's have some on click event on it, because I really want to set the current user as to something, right? So how do we do that? On click, let's call a function set user. Okay, but then let's hold on to it. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to handle this click. On click, we want to set the global context to that particular user, right? Now, to do that, the thing is, this is just a string. That's not how we will be able to set a state, right? So how do we manage that? Well, let's see. What is stopping us from doing something like this? Set user, use state, and like this. And this is something which we will pass in here as object. Okay, user, set user. And we will have to change some code. I'll tell you why we are doing it. Okay, this is the change which I need to copy over to this component as well. Okay, but still I think the default value I can keep it as the default value actually will not make sense. So fine, let's keep it. So obviously now the data is not visible, because maybe I can do like should work, right? I have some error. Right. So about in here, wherever we are using user, we will have to do user.name in here as well. Similarly, on the home page, where we have this dot name, anywhere else I have that? No. So now it should work. Okay. So Amitav is visible, fine, but what have I done? So see, when in this component, we are going to click on a username, which is this list, right? I want that the global context is able to get that, right? But how will it get? Because this was initially a string, correct? I want to set that as a property. So what I did, I used state, because the provider always returns an object. Okay, so if I give it this state variables, then I will be able to get the user object, and this function is also available. So any component which is using that hook, right, it has the ability to set state with this second object, which is set user, which basically means now I need to obviously create this function. We don't have this function over here. This is set user. No, we want to um, we don't want to set this. We'll have to set global user, something like this. We'll create a function over here, constant. This is a function, okay? And what we will do is, okay, I'll have to pass that, or maybe I'll create an anonymous function for now. Let's keep this a little simple. What happened? On click shouldn't have complained. On click, I am okay. Let us do set user. Why don't we do that? Okay, it's still complaining. I think there's some problem with my um, it says identifier expected. That is weird. This is not required. What is the problem? Let me see. On click, I will remove it for now. Okay, this is working. So something wrong with my on click. On click is like so. Okay, so far so good. I have set users. Okay, this is fine. I think the set user is what I wanted. The naming is a little confusing. That's why I landed up with that problem, because why don't we I have to get the user and set users, and this is singular. This is my global object which is coming from the use context hook, and this is the user which I'm getting from my state, which is being coming from the API response. Okay, so I hope you get that, because it is important to understand the difference between these two. Okay, now on click, I'm doing this. So if I'm let's see what happens over here. So you can see what basically happened is, if I see the context provider, right, that object is changing, right? Which means we were able to, this was the context which we just created, but then the app underscore app.js was sending a state object, this thing, which has user, which is the actual object which we have set over here. By default, it is Amitav, and it is also giving this function which allows us to set. So first parameter is the object, second parameter is the function which allows us to set something as a value in the state. This is what we get with the use state hook. But then this hook data is sent through this provider, right? And when our about us page is getting those two values, we were able to use the set user to set a user which was being clicked. Now I want to show you that this will be available even on the home page. So let's just say go back to home, okay, which will have a link like this, a tag. This is the next.js link tag. That's why I'm doing it like this. href equals this. I need to import the link. I am sure it will not come automatically for some reason, so I had to do it manually. And now if I go back, fine, this is Amitav, learn, this is done, and you can see the home page and the about us page is getting the object which we just selected. So what happened? I am setting this into the global context, and hence other components are able to get that value. So far, so good. Are you guys able to understand what just happened? Let's see if there are any comments. No, none so far. So I'm assuming you guys are able to understand what just happened. Okay. Now, the real advantage of this thing is, let's just say we have third level of hierarchy. We have a main, we have this loop over here, but then if we have third level nesting, for example, let's just say, yeah, actually, for some, I mean, again, this is a fake situation which I'm trying to create, but let's just say this thing, which is this p tag, right? It is actually a component. Okay, so let's create components, components component slash user um profile dot js. Okay, export default user profile, something like this. And in this, let's just say we have what, p tag name, user dot name. Oops, why is it taking this? Okay, I'm expecting um, use of as a prop. Okay, so this is how it will come up. And then, yeah, actually not the best example, I think, but yeah, anyways. So user equals user. Okay, and yeah, obviously there will be no change. How do I actually take it to the third level? That's what I'm thinking. Okay, the on click actually changed. Yeah, that's a good thing to do. So you see now, because the on click went away, right? I'm facing a problem that I'm not able to set the name of that current user, right? But then I definitely want that the, let's say, if this is the user, I have a button over here which is set user. So every tile now shows that button, and I wanted to click on this to set that user. Right now what will happen is, in a typical way, if you don't use context, what you will have to do is maybe pass a function from here to this particular component and as a prop, and then it will work accordingly, right? But then because we have that context in here, so what we can easily do is, okay, I'll have to const user set user equals use context, like this, user context. Okay, I'll easily get this. So obviously, which means I get this function. So on click, again, I'm doing an anonymous function, but ideally that's not a very good thing to do. But yeah, I think now what we will have is fail to compile. Why there is a failure? User has already been declared. Okay, okay, that's fine. I need to as global user. Okay, it doesn't work that way. um, that. Can I do global user like this? I think so. Right, right. So as you can see, now what happened is my user profile is completely independent. I can put it literally anywhere, and if I pass it the user, it will be able to show that, and it has that button which is able to set it. Correct? So yeah, this is the reason this use context can become very helpful. Okay, in situations where you have very deep nesting, you can use this hook and you can very easily get away. But then do remember that because now this profile component, right, it is dependent on this hook, so this entire functionality means I need this use context. So you'll have to be a little careful. But yes, using global, for global objects, this particular context can be very helpful. Yeah, that's what we have for today. I wanted to cover the use context hook. I hope I was able to explain it to you with different examples to make you understand how, in what scenarios you should be using it, and how it can be useful, and still it can be a little dangerous because your component becomes a little more dependent on the hook. So yeah, if you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll spend let's say another 10 minutes taking questions if you have anything, and then I'll stop. So let's see. Okay, Neeraj is here again. Custom hooks, right? Yes, custom hooks is something which I'll cover in my next video. I want to use a different video, or rather a different session, to talk about how to use custom hooks, but not in this different and in this video. That is something which is a big topic, and I want to cover it in a different video. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Neeraj. If anyone has any other question, you can definitely let me know. Otherwise, we can call it a day. All right. So I think there's none. So thank you everyone for joining this live. It was fun, and I hope you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.